Has been appreciated, thank you. Right, I'm now going to hand over to Fedelma Good, who's going to talk you through getting to grips with cookies themselves.
Thanks, Caroline. Good morning, everybody. Well, what I'm going to talk about is basically getting practical about this stuff. And I'm going to share with you basically the approach that Barclays is taking to actually moving towards full compliance with what we now know is the law. Okay, so one of the things we have now usefully is the ICO guidance, and they very clearly set out what the 3 steps they now wish businesses to follow to move towards compliance. And you can see them there on the slides. Now, it's actually very easy to set out those steps, but actually what is it you need to do to fulfill each of those? So, for instance, when you start to talk about checking the types of cookies, how do you go about that? How intrusive are your cookies? The ICO and government have made it very clear that we should all prioritise our activity towards those cookies that are more privacy intrusive. So how do you go about that? And then also decide what solution is right for you. The how question in terms of how you're going to move towards consent is perhaps the most difficult one here. And I don't think anyone yet has those answers. But let's talk through this a bit and see what we think. Usefully, again, within the ICO guidance, they give some more detail beyond and underneath those 3 steps that they've given. So what they are saying is, ideally, you might need to audit your own website, or just as simple as checking what data files are placed on user terminals and why. And also, the issue is about understanding the different functionality of the cookies. As we know, there is a carve-out for those that are strictly necessary for the service that the individual is using the website for. But again, there will be some grey areas, so you really will have to explore that. And a cookie, potentially, which has that purpose in mind, may also carry some additional data for a separate purpose. So you really do need to understand what it is each of the cookies you have is focused on and doing. The questions that I'm going to show you on the next 2 slides actually come from a questionnaire that we have developed and issued to all of our teams across our operation in the UK. And again, as Caroline has said, these slides can be sent out and we can send you the questionnaire as it exists. It's not rocket science, but it may help you reinventing the wheel if you want to issue a questionnaire yourselves. You may be surprised at some of these questions, but don't forget Barclays is an international business. So one of the things we needed to understand, certainly with some of our businesses such as Wealth, which are focused internationally, is what European countries is the website and therefore potentially the cookies used on it aimed at. So these are some of, if you like, the hygiene questions. And the second slide here is much more about actually what is it the cookie is focused on. So what is the purpose of the cookie? Now, what we did when we developed this questionnaire is we pushed out a template version first and then got those working with our websites to feed back to us the type of questions we should be asking them so that they could usefully actually complete the questionnaire and send us back the information. And there are some interesting elements in here. So, for instance, one of the pieces of learning we've had on the journey is that cookies themselves have an expiry date. So it's worth understanding from those that are putting your cookies in place on your sites what those dates are, and even if they have thought about setting those in time. And of course, then we have the first or third party cookie issue. Again, you have different types of cookies, temporary, persistent, the flash type cookies. You need to understand all of these and how they are being used on your site. Now, one of the things you may notice, we do not have in here a question about cookies that are used on our behalf in sites that other people use. So when we talk about our online activities, Barclays talks about operating in 3 types of area. We have sites that provide banking services, and there are definitely cookies in there, and there are cookies which are necessary for the service, but there are also those other more intrusive types of cookie. We then have are open sites where anybody can come to actually find out information about our products or services or even about the bikes. Yeah, so that one which is open to everyone, which they don't register to use and which isn't providing a specific banking service. Both of those types of sites are specifically under our control. But the third area, and one which I think is potentially more challenging for organisations like ourselves and potentially for you, is the third one, and that is where other sites are placing cookies which we're deriving benefit from. So we haven't sought to find information out about those purposely at this point in our audit, because we're anticipating that that will come from working with those third parties and understanding that they will be moving towards a point of compliance. But we do anticipate, so if there's anybody out there who is our suppliers, don't be too surprised, we do anticipate that we will have to change the terms of the contracts that we have with people who are doing that on our behalf, so that we can be absolutely comfortable that what is being done and where we are using the benefits of other people's cookies or deriving benefit from it, that they are operating compliantly. The second step is about assessing how intrusive your use of cookies is. And again, usefully within the ICO guidance, they talk about a sliding scale with privacy neutral at one end and the more intrusive at the other. And until you get the feedback, again, for an organisation as large as ours, we don't know all of the cookies. Some of you may be in a happy position of being able to sit down directly with a team and finding out what's going on. But you do need to understand what it is they are focused on. And then you can start to focus your activity, prioritising it, on getting those much more privacy intrusive ones sorted first. And the third step, as I said earlier, I think this is perhaps one of the most challenging ones. How will you, as an organisation, choose to gain consent? And as we've heard earlier on, the meaningful element of that consent is key. So, having looked at the ICO guidelines, I thought you might like to see some of the other things that we're doing, and again, perhaps use this as a checklist for yourself. One of the things we have found is we're, again, a large organisation, and we have privacy and data protection teams in each business area, and they will be working with those teams who are putting cookies in place. What we found was that not all of those people actually understood how cookies worked. They didn't actually know the mechanics, the techniques, and everything that went with them. So one of the things that we did is actually develop a set of slides, and I will share some of those with you later. And again, a copy of those can be taken from the DMA, because it helps if people know what cookies are and that they understand what they're fully about. The second thing is to actually move this forward. There are a number of teams that need to be engaged. Your IT digital teams, your legal teams, compliance, PR, marketing, because this is a process that needs to be managed through consistently from start to finish. For us, one of the things we had to put in place last week was communications out to ensure that any of our customer-facing staff, if they got any queries arising as a result of the media coverage, so that they could say what Barclays were doing in light of the new legislation. And we are taking some very, very just simple steps. And you can see a final one there. It's just making some easy and immediate changes to our cookie policies. So these are gradually going in, where we will just be putting a line in our existing cookie policy to advise those who would like to know what we're doing that we are moving towards compliance with the new requirements. The audit we've already spoken about. And the issue for us as well was we have internal sites. So we have a significant number of internal sites targeted at our staff. And some of those do use cookies, so again, we are auditing those. Now again, I realise we're fairly large in the scope of this thing, but again, don't forget about your staff in the context of this. You obviously need to develop your action plan and prioritising your actions about the privacy impact, the high privacy impact cookies. And then there will need to be updates to the relevant cookies that you have on your sites and that people can find information about how you are working with cookies and everything. And one of the key things for us will be keeping our staff updated. If you can imagine, with our branch network, with our telephony staff, all of those people who have a customer-facing role, they need to understand in as simple as possible terms, so that our customers actually are clear what is happening, what stance we are taking, and if any queries arise, where they can go or who they can talk to. Putting your plan in place and putting your cookies right is not the end of the story. You're going to need to do this on an ongoing basis. It's not a once and done job, this is ongoing. Technology is going to evolve. There will be great ideas emerging, and you'll need to be keeping on top of it. So what you need is a process, a mechanism for governing how those things are managed going forward. And perhaps last, but definitely not least, is I would encourage you to keep talking within industry forums such as this, because I think this is not a competitive issue. We can all help each other as our learning goes, because certainly that's the way Barclays is approaching it. And the materials that you can get from the DMA are the ones that we've developed and we're happily sharing, so that we can together as industry actually move forward and help consumers feel comfortable with what we are all doing online. I spoke about the need to educate and inform, and what we have done, as I say, is we developed a set of slides called All About Cookies. Caroline can send these out. You're going to send them out with this one?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. So if people would like them. And here is just a sample of what they contain. So this is the content. And one of the things, again, is with these, which we'll be happy to share, is if anybody has any useful content or believes that there's something missing from this. Somebody was telling me last week that there's also something called a zombie cookie, which we weren't aware of. So send it through, so again, that we can keep these updated and everybody can benefit from. So again, just for those people who will be working in this regard and need to understand actually what is it that cookies are, what do they do? These set of slides are just designed to help there. And you don't need me to read these. Okay, and there are some nice pretty pictures here as well. I always think a few pictures go a long way. And there's some journey types to show what the cookies, actually the journey is in terms of what is placed on a PC and what the individual sees. And with that, I will hand back to Caroline. Thank you very much.